Thank you so much for this introduction. Thank you, and welcome to this session. I hope you like it, and we are going to speak about the data, surprisingly. And I would like to start my presentation today with the famous quotation from Mr. Charles Darwin, who once said that it's not the strongest and not the smartest species that survive, but the ones that most adaptable to change. We can agree or disagree with Mr. Darwin's theory of evolution. However, I think this works extremely well in the business context. Myself, in the beginning of this century, I moved to Finland and I joined Nokia Corporation as a manager of global data integration platform there. At that time, Nokia was the best company in the mobile devices area. There was no question what phone you have. The question was which Nokia you have. It was very financially strong. It hired the smartest people from the market. However, in 10 years, the companies literally disappeared. And if you ask the young people now what that name means, some of them even doesn't know. Why did it happen? Because Nokia didn't adapt it to change quickly. They didn't adapt to the change in customer behavior, to the new trends in the mobile devices market, and it didn't survive. I want to move to the data area now, because I think we are going now through the fundamental change in the data management and the data integration approaches right now. To explain it better, I need to take a couple of steps back to the past and see how did we manage the data in the past like 30, 25 years. We lived in this paradigm of data gravity. You build a big data set, it starts attracting the smaller ones, growing bigger, bigger, and bigger, and that's the only way to manage the data. That's the only way to provide the proper reporting, proper analytics, to get all the data together into a single monolithic repository. And we started with the idea of data warehouse. If you remember those names like Rolf Kimball, Bill Inman, who came up with the whole framework, how to build the proper data warehouse, how to move all the data available into a single relational repository so that you can put your reporting, put your analytics on top. So the idea was get all your data and move them into a single data warehouse. After some time, the technology changed a little bit, and everybody started speaking about the data lakes. However, this data gravity paradigms, the paradigm of move all your data into a single something, it stayed the same. We took the different technology, however, we're still collecting all possible data into a single place, building a monolithic repository of the data and trying to manage that. What we can hear right now that you want to move all your data into a single cloud, which basically same paradigm, however, different technology again. This approach has its own advantages, of course, but the disadvantages is becoming more and more clear now as data volumes are growing and the requirement for the more and more like a real-time data processing is coming from the business. This approach leads to the very slow process of data onboarding while you're moving those terabytes of data physically from point A to point B. It takes time. It creates 10 to 12 copies of the same data in the organization. You're moving data from data sources, you're moving them between the stages inside of your data warehouse or between the zones inside of your data lake. and you're ending up having 10 to 12 copies of the same data stored physically in your organization. So in my opinion, the reality now is not the data gravity, but rather data anti-gravity. Data doesn't want to stay in the single physical repository. Data is everywhere. Data is on-prem, data is in the cloud, data is in data warehouse, data lake, in the applications that are not integrated to either of that. And this is a modern problem of data management. If you remember, there were a lot of conversation about so-called data silos. So there were different applications, and we said, okay, the data is siloed, we need to connect them together, collect them into a single place. What we've done right now, we've built another data silos, but much bigger. And it didn't help us to solve the problem. Now the data is in all of that repositories, on-prem, in the cloud, data warehouses, data lakes based on Hadoop technology, some applications. We can see the whole spectrum of new repositories that build specifically to manage a narrow case of data manipulation that we call them collectively NoSQL. That can be 𝐃𝐢𝐿u database, document store, time series database, graph database. A lot of technologies is in place to manipulate and manage the data. And the question from the business is still the same. Where is my data? How can I manage the data? How can I get the insight from all those repositories? Distributed data landscape is the reality right now. This is something that we need to live with, and it's something that we need to learn how to deal with. There are three basically dimensions of data distribution. Data is distributed technologically. We have different technologies for different data. Graph data should sit in the graph database, relational data in the relational database, and structured data in the Hadoop cluster. We have geography as another anti-gravity power that distributes the data. Data is everywhere globally. You don't want to move them to a single place just to do the reporting. It's a very heavy exercise. Data is separated by the ownership. In very many cases, we can see that you are not allowed to move the data from point A to point B because of the ownership of the data. Denodo as a company, we are the leader in the data integration, and we are the only company that provides the way how to solve this problem of distributed data landscapes. What we do, we integrate the data and manage them in a virtual way. We don't move the data physically. So basically it works like that. Whenever the query comes from the data consumer, and data consumer can be anybody, starting from the simple reporting BI tool, or that can be your data scientist training the artificial intelligence algorithms. That can be your analytical team doing some analytical exercises. That can be the portal for data democratization or for open data initiatives, data monetization. Every single project that we do in the IT organization now requires data, one way or another. So whenever the query comes to our platform, in real time, we reach out to all the available data sources. We got the data that is needed on demand. We can combine them and apply all the mathematical operations that are allowed to be applied on the data. We can provide the security at the same point, and data governance procedures and processes right here. And we deliver this data in a real-time manner, most closely to the real time, to the consuming application. That gives us several advantages over the traditional approach. First, you don't create multiple copies of the data. Data replication is not a good idea by at least two reasons. The more copies of your data you created, the more you're prone for the security risks, for the data breaches. You need to make sure that all the copies of your data is equally secured. The second one, you're running into the risk of your data being inconsistent. When one copy of the data is not equal to another one, then your financial department can have one figure and the marketing department different figure, which is not good at all. Secondly, we can provide almost real-time access to all the available data sources right now on demand. And now I would like to spend another maybe 5 minutes speaking about the modern data architectures that we are building in the region. We are a pretty young company. We are only 25 years old. We started as a university startup in University of La Coruña in Spain. And since then, we pretty quickly evolved into the world leader into the data integration space. However, we still keep like this scientific academical spirit. And that's the only thing we do. And we came to the region 2 years ago. I started the office in Dubai. Now we have office in Riyadh as well. We are working across the region. And these are the examples of the modern data architectures that we are building for the customers in the Gulf region, including some of the biggest government institutions, commercial banks, mobile operators, and so on. And the first example of the logical architecture is logical data fabric. This is a buzzword right now that a lot of people are talking about, the data fabric. And data fabric is naturally exactly the way to solve the problem of data that is distributed technologically. You have the data sitting in completely different repositories, coming at different speed, owned by different people. However, we can connect to all that data sources. You can join the data together. You can do your aggregation and any kind of other data manipulation. That's becoming a very proper place to enforce the security mechanisms on the data, to enforce your company-wide data access model. And we are providing the data as a catalog of data. Imagine your data scientist goes to a single portal and can see all the data sets available in the single place, and that screen is completely decoupled from the technology that we use to store and manage the data. It can be anywhere globally, but the data scientist has all the data sets at the same screen. Your reporting application can sit on top of that and do the reporting without the physical replication of the data from point A to point B. Because the alternative for that now is to get the data physically, move them in yet another super huge monolithic repository that would take your edges to implement, and another big issues will be with the support and change management. In this kind of paradigm and this architecture, you can easily connect the new sources to this platform. You can migrate the data from one source to another if you need to move to the new version of your application, if you're implementing the new application. And the end users won't even notice that, because they will be querying the data virtualization platform, this decoupling abstraction layer that gives you ability to see all the data available. Another example of the modern data architecture, maybe you've heard of that. It's the latest trend in data management is a data mesh architecture. Data mesh is more about the data ownership more than anything else, more about the processes that you want to implement in your company to manage the data properly. Data mesh principle says that if the financial department produces the data, they should own it. You don't want to move that and delegate the ownership to the IT organization. The ownership should stay with data producer, because only they know better what is the good data quality for that. And they should provide all this data in the form of a unified interface to the centralized data management platform that would connect them together and master them on fly, building this layer of data as a product. that can be available for any other part of your organization. Or another good example is that we are also implementing in the region is the data exchange between the government entities, for example. When the data ownership stays with the given ministry, and then you are building this unified layer on top of all the ministries that can be used to do some advanced analytics on the whole data in the country, or it can be used for the data democratization initiatives when you want to make some data publicly available coming from completely different places, like from police department, from health department, from pension department. That can be brought together and secured and shared with the consumers according to the access rights, of course. And I want to finish my presentation with our slogan, that our motto, if you will. You won't stop collecting the data. You should start connecting the data. You don't need to move the data from point A to point B physically in order to manage that, in order to get all the insights from your distributed data landscapes. Thank you very much. I hope you like that. And if any questions, I can take it now, or we can speak at our booth in the lobby. Any questions? If no questions, you're welcome to come to our booth and we can talk deeper, we can set up meetings, and we can come to your place and show how it works. Thank you so much. Thank you.